Hey, my name's Eli. I'm going to be your nurse today. How are you doing?
Megan, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Joining me is Dr. Doggy Hauser. So, for the purpose of today's video, we will be, I will be rather, administering what we call an AIMS exam. This is essentially just an abnormal involuntary movement scale. So, essentially what I'm doing is assessing for any signs of abnormal movement through the entire body system. So the first thing we want to do with this examination, either before or after, is observe the patient in a unobtrused, just non-monitored setting. What we want to do is essentially monitor them in their, what we almost refer to as their natural habitat, when they aren't aware that they're being watched and they're just behaving naturally. Additionally, when doing so, or when doing the exam rather, we want to make sure that the patient is in a chair that has a solid, firm back and does not have armrests. Obviously, for the purpose of today's video, I'm in a home. We don't have such a chair, so I am just acknowledging and verbalizing that I know that. So let's start with the examination itself. The first thing I would ask is for my patient to remove their socks and shoes, if they don't mind, and place your feet firmly on the floor. Perfect. So the next thing I'm going to ask is, while you're doing that, do you have anything in your mouth, whether tobacco, gum, food, anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Perfect. Fantastic. Okay. So following that, I need to ask the patient about the condition of their teeth. Now, as this patient is a young, healthy adult male, I would assume that he has his teeth and not dentures, but I still need to ask, do you have dentures?
No, sir.
Fantastic. Okay, and with your teeth, are you having any problems, sensitivity, numbing, any pain of that nature?
Not at all.
Once again, these are all good signs. So from that, we're going to move on to general abnormalities. Do you notice any abnormal movements of your mouth, your face, your hands, your feet whatsoever?
No, sir.
Perfect. If the patient did verbalize that they do in fact have abnormal movements, we would ask them to describe these movements, ask them, to what extent are you suffering from these movements? Essentially, how badly are they annoying you? And finally, we would ask, how badly are they interfering with your daily activities? Following this, we want to ask the patient, if they would, to place their hands on their knees with your legs slightly apart, feet flat on the floor. Perfect. For this, we are assessing any abnormal movements throughout the entire body system. I do not see any, so we'll move on to the next. Following this, if you wouldn't mind, place your hands beneath your legs, loosely unsupported. This is the position for a male. For a female, if they were wearing a dress, we would ask them to hang them over their knees. For this, we are observing for any abnormal signs of movement in their hands as well as other general body areas. I do not see any, so we'll move on to the next one. We would ask the patient to open their mouth, keep the tongue inside the mouth, and we are observing the tongue at rest. Now, in a typical examination, we would do this twice, but for the purposes of time, I'm just going to verbalize that I do know that. The next thing we want to ask is for the patient to, once again, open the mouth, but extend their tongue, or protrude it rather. We're observing for abnormalities of tongue movement. Once again, we would ask them to do this twice, but we want to save some time, so we'll move on. You can go ahead and stop for me. Now, what I want you to do is take your thumb and tap it to each finger, if you would, as rapidly as possible for about 10 to 15 seconds. What we're observing for here is abnormal movements in the face and the feet. Now, this is what's known as an activation technique. I don't see any abnormal movements in the face or the feet, and his fingers are flowing rapidly, so everything looks good. You can stop. Now, another thing we want to do is we want to ask the patient to flex and extend both their right and left arm one at a time. Perfect. No abnormal movements, no pain whatsoever.
Not at all.
Fantastic. So once again, these are all good signs. Thus far, he's not suffering at all. So we're going to move on. Next, I want to ask the patient to stand up. And if you don't mind, just face the general direction so as to not be in an awkward angle for the camera. What we're doing here is we're observing the patient in their profile from the side. We're observing all body areas, hips included. That's key on the assessment sheet. Now, I do not see any abnormalities. Patient's gait, or balance rather, is fantastic, so we're going to move on. From here, I want to ask you to extend both arms outstretched with the palms facing downward like so. For this, we want to observe the trunk, the legs, and the mouth. Everything checks out, so we'll move on to the final examination technique. If you don't mind, just turn toward the door, walk a few paces, and then walk back. For this, we want to observe their gait and their hands. Everything checks out. We would have the patient do this twice in a typical examination, but we want to save some time. Now, from the thumb movements So the arm movements all the way to the patient standing up and walking, all 5 of those steps are once again referred to as activation techniques. Now, once we've finished the actual assessment, we need to go into the examination sheet and grade the patient. So there's a few things we need to know. If for any 2 categories a patient scores a score of 2, this would result in a positive AIMS score. For any 1 category in which a patient scores either a 3 or a 4, this would also result in a positive AIMS score. Now, as I did not notice any abnormalities in any of the categories whatsoever, I would give this patient a 0, which essentially is a none or normal in all categories, resulting in a negative AIMS score. So that, in essence, is the examination procedure. Do you have any more questions for me or anything you need from me before I go?
No, sir, I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.